Good morning. It's Tuesday, February 3rd, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, pro-Russian rebels in eastern Ukraine seek to form a 100,000-strong army to challenge Kiev forces. Egypt's tourism minister says visitor numbers are up following a steep fall in recent years. We take a deeper look at the land of the Nile has to offer tourists. And later on in the show, Israeli photojournalist Alex Livak recently returned from Haiti for the first time since the 2011 earthquake. Good morning, I'm Meredith Ross. We begin with the crisis in eastern Ukraine, where pro-Russian separatists are seeking to mobilize a 100,000-strong military force to help battle Kiev's army units in the disputed territory. Such a move will certainly escalate a 9-month conflict that has already left at least 5,100 people dead. Now on Sunday, battles raged between government forces and pro-Russian rebels for control of a strategic transport hub as the death toll mounted following the collapse of ceasefire talks. French President François Hollande, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko held a conference call in which they called for an immediate ceasefire. Meanwhile, last night, U.S. State Department spokesperson Jen Psaki told reporters that Washington has not made a decision on whether to provide lethal assistance to Kiev, saying the U.S. does not desire to start a fresh conflict with Russia. And we are joined now in studio by Channel 1 Foreign Affairs editor Oren Nahari.
Hello,
Thank you for being here. Good morning, Oren. But before we discuss this further, let's first take a look at the following report that recaps the latest events from Ukraine.
Any hopes for a real truce collapsed over the weekend as once again fighting intensified between Ukrainian armed forces and pro-Russian separatists. The United States is now considering arming the Ukrainian forces and providing them with defensive weapons and equipment as pro-Russian separatists vowed to mobilize up to 100,000 fighters for their latest East Ukraine offensive.
After today's event, it has become urgent. It will be a general mobilization, so we should take it into consideration.
On Monday, artillery attacks on Donetsk killed at least one civilian, while Kiev's military reported that 13 Ukrainian soldiers and at least 7 civilians have been killed in fighting in the past 24 hours. Saturday's peace talks ended with no progress, with Ukraine's representative and separatist envoys each accusing the other of sabotaging negotiations.
We are ready for a dialogue and ready to act in the framework of Minsk agreements. But we need a dialogue, not Ukraine's monologue, and we need absence of their ultimatums and some positions that would be acceptable for all the sides.
The outcome dashed expectations that a new ceasefire could be put together soon to stem the 9 months of fighting, which has already left at least 5,100 people dead in Ukraine's industrial heartland. As the U.S. takes a look into arming Ukrainian forces, Russian officials warn of irreversible results, implying the gravest consequences possible between Russia and the West since the Cold War.
And we are also joined now from Kiev by Ukrainian freelance journalist Vladimir Solohub. Good morning. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning, Meredith. Good to be with you.
And what is the situation now on the ground in Donetsk?
Well, to be frank, the situation is getting worse and worse with each passing day. And just yesterday, I spoke to one of my sources in Donetsk. That person said that the fighting takes place around the city, and the outskirts of the city itself is being regularly shelled. She said that basically that the shelling of the city has become a daily life of no ordinary citizens, that they no longer hide for cover whenever they hear the shelling. Also, the reports of a heavy fighting come from Debaltseve, which is a strategic railway hub in eastern Ukraine, and the reports of dead and of killed civilians and military men are coming from eastern Ukraine with each day.
So what's this, you mentioned the new shelling and fighting in this town, Debaltseve. What's the significance of this area now coming under fire?
Well, this is a major railway hub for eastern Ukraine, with the railroads coming from Russia to Ukraine and also across the eastern Ukraine. Currently, this town is being controlled by Ukrainian forces, but obviously the Russia-backed separatists are very keen to gain control over the city, to have access to this railroad hub and to be able to transport whatever they are transporting between Ukraine and Russia, and also across eastern Ukraine, also by rail, apart from using regular roads.
So this is a contested area. Now, with more and more civilians being killed, you mentioned this just now, and violent attacks in the east, how are civilians in the area coping? Are they fleeing? Are some staying? What's the general situation?
Well, Meredith, the general situation is very dire. One could say that humanitarian crisis in the region is already there. According to the UN estimates, more than 600,000 people have already left the region, starting from late spring when the fighting in eastern Ukraine kicked off. A lot of people are still fleeing the area. But a lot of people don't want or simply cannot leave the area for many reasons. And as I have said, as my source who lives in Donetsk indicated, that the shelling or the fighting has become a regular routine, everyday routine of these people. They are used to running for bomb shelters whenever they hear the incoming shelling. Some of the people live in bomb shelters for many weeks. There's shortage of food, of water supplies. In some cities, there's shortage of electricity, like the Balsava. The Balsava has been cut from electricity for more than a week now. So the situation is very dire in this region.
It's very dire indeed. Now, stay on the line with us, Vladimir. We're coming back to studio here with Oren. Now, I want to bring this more to an international level. The U.S. is mulling providing lethal help to the Ukrainian forces. Until now, they've helped defensively, non-lethal weapons such as equipment and night vision goggles, what have you. But the U.S. does not get involved in conflicts lightly. What does this mean?
First of all, let's put aside some of the nice talks. There's no such thing as a non-lethal weapon. You can say non-lethal equipment, but a weapon is a weapon. And now the fresh word is that the White House is considering what they say is a fresh look. Now, a fresh look at the situation, meaning our diplomacy hasn't worked so far. It has worked up to a point in bringing the economy of Russia, I will not say to its knees, but hurting it deeply. But at the moment, there is a situation on the ground, and the situation on the ground is a strategic or geostrategic situation. Perhaps if we can see the map, what the rebel forces want and what the Russian wants more than most, presumably, is to build a corridor, a land corridor between the Crimea that Russia annexed and Russia itself. And then they control the entire eastern part of the Ukraine up until the Dnieper. And the strategic town is Mariupol, and we see it on the right-hand side near Rostov-on-Don. And then they can go into the Crimea, and then they control this area, the whole eastern part of the Ukraine. Now, at the moment, Europe does not want, and Angela Merkel said it, they will not provide weapons to the Kiev government. And the Kiev government cannot hold its own. It could hold its own versus the rebels. But the rebels are supported by the Russian army. They have Russian soldiers. They have Russian equipment. And the Russians do not quib about such thing as non-lethal weapons. They give them lethal weapons. They give them surface-to-air missiles, tanks, grenades, rocket launchers, what have you. And at the moment, they have the upper hand. And now what does it mean? It means that Russia is willing, by force, to have its huge project of the Euro-Asian bloc, led by Russia, they say it, from the Pacific Ocean into the heart of Europe. Not exactly the old USSR, but something that is similar to it, and it scares the hell out of other Western countries. Countries like Poland, countries like Lithuania, Estonia, those countries that thought that they have escaped the Soviet regime, they have the Soviet, from their point of view, occupation, and now they are saying, there are books, what do you do if Russian forces come? I mean, 25 years after the collapse of the Berlin Wall, they say, or they think, that it could happen again. And they are part of NATO. They are part of the European Union. This is a whole new ballgame. Ukraine is out on the cold. It's not part of the EU. It's not part of the NATO. They cannot expect or demand any kind of support. They do. and it could take a match to start a huge fire.
And I want to address the pledge that the separatists said that they would mobilize 100,000 troops. Now, Vladimir, will these be soldiers entering Ukraine from Russia? The separatists don't have that type of manpower, do they?
Well, first of all, the separatists and Russia at all times have asserted that there are no regular Russian troops in eastern Ukraine, that all the Russian citizens who are fighting in eastern Ukraine are the so-called volunteers who have come to help their fellow countrymen, their fellow people in eastern Ukraine to fight against the so-called fascist junta of Kyiv. Most likely what it will be, they will round up all available men in eastern Ukraine, Ukrainian men who live in the Donbass region, to fight on their side, on the separatist side, and then whatever manpower they're lacking, they'll just get it from Russia in form of these so-called volunteers.
So that's how Russia gets around the whole issue of the world pointing the blame at them, is just saying that these people are volunteering on their own and we have nothing to do with this. We're not issuing orders to send them anywhere.
Absolutely. That's the rhetoric Russia has been applying since the Crimean crisis, since the Crimean situation, that all that which is happening in Ukraine, what was happening in Crimea, now what is happening in eastern Ukraine, this is sparked from within. This is local population who do not want to be ruled by the Kyiv government. They have decided to rebel against the central government, and they're fighting. And obviously, some of the Russians who are compassionate with their cause, they decide to come there and join this cause.
And it must be said that the Kiev government announced that they will have another push for mobilization. They want to bring up the Ukrainian army, the Kiev army, up to a force of 200,000. But again, it's not the numbers, it's the equipment, it's the military training, etc. And here, Russia and the separatists have a huge, huge advantage.
Mm-hmm. And in talking about, again, the U.S. involvement, Russia said that if the U.S. does get involved and provides lethal weapons, then there will be an irreversible response. Can the U.S. take this threat seriously?
It should take it seriously, and probably it will not be just in the Ukrainian front. There are many, many issues around the world that the U.S. and Russia are moving separately. One of the major ones is, of course, Iran and the Iranian nuclear program, in which Russia is siding more and more with Tehran. There are other places where Russia can hurt the U.S. and vice versa. I mean, their interests are combined all around the world, and we see that every place where Putin has a chance to put his thumb into the West's eyes, he'll do it gladly. And in Russian military doctrine, again, a month ago, Putin announced that the enemy is the West, not Islamic terror, not the rising of dominance of China, not other threats or imagined threat to Russia. The enemy is still the West and the NATO alliance.
Mm-hmm. And Vladimir, what is your reaction to this? Putin just trying to do as much as he can to gain power against the West?
Well, many commentators have already labeled this conflict as the new Cold War. It looks like this whole mess, which is being stirred by Russia in Ukraine, is isolating Russia more and more from the Western society, from the civilized world. And looks like Russia at some point sees, well, there are economic sanctions being imposed on Russia. The Russian economy is suffering a lot. Russian people are suffering a lot, but at the same time, President Putin is not ready to back down, and he is trying to confront the West as much as possible, as much as he can, and he continues stirring up trouble in the eastern Ukraine, just as much as the Western countries are trying to help Ukrainian central government to fight with these pro-Russia separatists.
Right. Well, we will see how all this unfolds. It has switched dramatically into an escalation since the weekend. Vladimir, thank you very much for joining us from Kiev.
Thank you, Meredith.
And with less than 2 weeks to go until elections, Nigeria is bracing for an increase in bloodshed by Islamist group Boko Haram. On Monday, a car bomb went off near a stadium in the northeastern Nigerian city of Gombe a few minutes after President Goodluck Jonathan left a party rally there, killing one person and wounding 18. A weekend of violence saw the Borno state capital, Maiduguri, hit for the second Sunday in a row. But Nigerian army soldiers, aided by scores of civilian guards, managed to keep the militants at bay. Now, security analysts believe Maiduguri, the birthplace of Boko Haram, will likely be hit again before polling day, given its symbolism for the group and because it would undermine the vote. The militants are in control of most of the state and have effectively surrounded the city. Nigeria now looks to its neighbors Chad and Cameroon to help quell the jihadist threat. Meanwhile, incumbent President Goodluck Jonathan, who has been criticized for failing to end the violence, is hoping for a political boost from any military successes in the tight election campaign against challenger Muhammad Buhari. Still with us in studio to comment is Channel 1 Foreign Editor Affairs, Oren Nahari. Thank you still for being here, Oren. And again, let's take a look at the following report, and we will take it from there.
Less than 2 weeks before the country goes to the polls, Boko Haram continues to pose a grave threat to Nigeria, sparking involvement of the African Union itself. 5 people were killed and 7 others injured when 2 bombs shattered a market in the city of Gombe Sunday.
Yesterday I went to the wood market. My friend and I later went to the restaurant to eat. And then we heard the sound of the bomb. I got injured in my buttocks, legs and hands.
I got injured in my knees and ankles, but no doctor has attended to me yet.
But this attack wasn't the sole incident that day. Earlier, 10 people were killed when a suicide bomber blew himself up outside the home of a member of the Federal House of Representatives in Potiskum. But the day didn't belong totally to the African jihadists. The Nigerian military was able to repel an attack by Boko Haram militants on the outskirts of Maiduguri. At least 8 people were killed in the attack, which began on Saturday, the second by Boko Haram on the city in a week. The jihadist militants are looking to conquer the city and make it the capital of a breakaway Islamic state in northeastern Nigeria. Boko Haram is also engaged in hostilities against Nigeria's neighbors, Cameroon, Chad, and Niger. Authorities in Chad stated that 120 Boko Haram militants had been killed by its forces deployed in Cameroon Sunday, after these forces were attacked by the militants. The authorities said only 3 soldiers were killed in the fighting. Indeed, the regional threat has led to the African Union authorizing the formation of a multinational force of 7,500 troops to combat the jihadist group.
Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, and ISIL, all these terrorists, they have committed unspeakable brutality against humanity. Not a single country, even the regional countries, cannot handle this alone.
In Nigeria itself, the crisis is complicating the political position of President Goodluck Jonathan as polling day approaches. The contest is seen as the most competitive in years, despite the incumbent's easy victory over his rival Muhammadu Buhari back in 2011. The inner turmoil in Nigeria may possibly lead to changes in government.
And we're now joined from Abuja by freelance journalist Daniel Osunde. Good morning, Daniel. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning.
Now, what has it been like in the city of Maiduguri coming under attack twice in 1 week?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that the whole situation is still very much fluid, even a day after the blast, because like you just rightly said, for about 3 days during the last week, there have been successive attacks by the Boko Haram militant group. As you could recall, on Sunday, there was another attack by Boko Haram militants in the state of Borno, in the city of Maiduguri. They were trying to claim more caliphates for themselves. But due to the excessive force used by the Nigerian military forces, they were able to repel them back. Sources say that there are about 500 people that have been killed in this attack.
It's quite a large-scale attack there, but we will be coming back to you, Daniel, but coming here in studio, Oren, what's the significance of Maiduguri? It's the birthplace of Boko Haram. What would happen if they took over the state capital?
That's a huge question, because at the moment we see that Boko Haram, and they are they are building, or declare that they are building, their own caliphate. I mean, like very much like ISIS, and they were there before ISIS. And we have to remember the significance of the name of the leader, calling himself Abu Bakr Shakau. Again, the leader of ISIS calls himself Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. The name has significance because Abu Bakr was the name of the first caliph after Muhammad, the prophet of the Islam. So again, they are seeing themselves as building not just, they are not leaders of terror group, they are not leaders of even separatists who want their own state. They are building a new Islamic caliphate in the heart of Africa. And if they capture a big city with all the significance, they are not just a group coming out of the jungles, raiding some city, kidnapping, which is a horrific crime in itself, several hundred girls, and disappearing again into the void of the jungles there in northern Nigeria. They are there, they have a base, and this is the base of a big city, is something to build upon their own version, of course, of this Islamic State.
And coming back to the capital, Daniel, tell us about these civilian vigilantes who have been assisting the Nigerian army in defending the city. Do they have any military training at all? I mean, are these just people who feel like they have nothing left to lose?
Well, these are people who have been claiming that since the military and the armed forces have not been able to rescue them from the incessant attacks by the military group, they decided to take arms upon themselves to safeguard their women and their children by themselves. And they're not specifically trained in any kind of self-defense, but they just all they're trying to do is to make sure that their people are safe and they live in peace.
So is there maybe a sense of hope then for people living in the area because army and civilian forces have been able to fend off Boko Haram twice, or is there a looming dread that the city could be taken over at any moment?
Well, like Mr. Oren rightly said, they are trying to set for themselves a caliphate within the 3 states of Cameroon, Chad, and Nigeria, and so they've been able to do it so well in the past 6-7 months. And with the heavy attacks they take on the people, and I think right now the people are living in fear. And also I think they're trying to intimidate the people from going to the polls to vote for who they want to come into power in next upcoming elections.
Right. I mean, is there any hope that the elections will continue as planned?
Oh yeah, the election is going to go ahead. For now, the election is going to go ahead, but several people from the government have unofficially stated that they would have loved the election to be postponed to a later date, but no word has been given from INEC or any electoral body or whatsoever of what is going to go ahead. In the meantime, we're still expecting that the election is going to come up on the 14th of February.
And Oren, I mean, there is expected to be an uprising in violence coming up to these elections because Boko Haram does not want these to take place because, as you said, they would like to take over.
Yes, but the elections, I agree with Mr. Elsunde, the elections will take place. After all, most of Nigeria is not under control of Boko Haram, and even if in Afghanistan, in the height of the Taliban and the height of the bombings of Al-Qaeda and Taliban, we saw that the election day itself succeeded, or in Iraq, we've seen it. Now, Mr. Elsunde rightly emphasized the importance of Chad and Cameroon because we've seen in the past that because of the sanctity of the borders, or so-called sanctity of the borders, rebel groups, terror groups, moved from one country to the other, and in Africa it's very, very easy to do, like in the Middle East, in other places. The Lord Resistance Army and the Hutu militias moving from Rwanda to Congo and back again, Lord Resistance Army moving from Uganda to Sudan and other places. And now, if Chad and Cameroon mobilize with Nigeria, they can do harm to Boko Haram. In Africa, we've seen in the past that the African Union forces were not very capable. They could not force truce or bring a terror group to its knees, which is very, very hard to do anywhere on the planet. But now, if there is a mobilization, a good one, against this Boko Haram, they can, I will not say eliminate it, because it's a long shot, but they can do damage to it, and they can minimize up to their effect on the people, minimize their threat to major towns and even to major cities in the north northern part of Nigeria.
And Daniel, do civilians share the sentiment that Oren is talking about, that they have hope now that Chad and Cameroon are providing assistance against the jihadist group, as well with this African Union decision to develop a task force against the group? Is there hope that they will be taken down?
Well, recently, like he rightly said, the AU had made a commitment and agreement to send down 7,500 troops to combat this this menace that is going on in these three neighboring states. But the people on ground, the people are the ones who feel the conflict more, and they've lost a lot of loved ones in this situation, and it's hard to say that they have confidence in any of what the agreement they've made or the government of Nigeria is doing, because like I rightly said, on Sunday there was a big clash in Maiduguri, and a lot of people who died. Like it was not. It hasn't been stated, or nobody is clear about it, if it was mostly Boko Haram militants that died, or it was civilians.
Right,
but the people are saying that, the people are saying that the civilians died because there was a air raid bombardment by the military of Chad, and there was reports that people died of stray bullets. And it's still very, very fluid situations, like I said before. I don't think in the nearest future, like when Mr. Oren rightly put it, that when he said that the damage will be done, because right now Boko Haram has become even bigger and stronger, and they're more sophisticated these days. Because if you recall, in 2013, in the month of February, there was a French family who was kidnapped, and the ransom was paid to them, $3 million. And they're making more money, and when they get more money, they get also good equipment. They're able to buy more ammunitions, and also when they go into Nigeria to take any cities, to claim any city for themselves, they go into the police stations, they loot the arms, and they go to banks, they loot money and a lot of things. This is a cause for worry for the people, and I don't think that people going ahead with all these things, the people would feel safe in any way.
And I want to connect to what Mr. Osunde said. If we return to terror, not in the modern sense of the word, but in the old one, like fear, huge fear. When you think about people coming at night, raiding a town, kidnapping your children and disappearing with them and converting them to Islam in some cases, and then marrying them to some jihadists, this is a huge, huge fear burning in the heart of people. And we have to remember that the 200 girls or so that were kidnapped are still there in the hands of Boko Haram, and perhaps will never return to their parents. And these people in these areas live under this fear now, as we speak.
Paralyzing fear. Well, Oren Nahar, thank you very much for being here. And Daniel, that is all the time we have, but thank you very much for joining us from Abuja. And coming up next, can Egypt lure tourists despite ongoing instability? But first, let's hear some more of this morning's headlines. Welcome back. Let's say hello and good morning to Anthony Grant, who joins us daily to discuss the news you missed while scanning the headlines. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning to you.
What do you
Wow, looking as bright as the sun behind us.
Aw, Tony!
Yeah, well, it's true.
Thank you.
Winter sun. Speaking of the region, the Jerusalem Post has some good news, actually, to report about Jordan returning its ambassador to Israel, to Tel Aviv. And this is after there was the tensions, of course, at the Temple Mount following the attack several months ago against Yehuda Glick. So now the Foreign Ministry of Israel has confirmed that as of yesterday, the Jordan ambassador is basically going to be back in business, so to speak. And Jordan says that Israel has taken positive steps towards reducing tension with regard to the Temple Mount situation. So again, it's a sort of a nice headline. We hope that it will prevail in terms of the reduction of friction at the very controversially spot, I guess you could say.
Absolutely. Any sort of peaceful scenario in this region, we can welcome. So
yeah, and of course, we love Jordan. So
yes.
It's good to hear. Interesting court ruling mentioned in the Times of Israel in Germany. A German judge has ruled that anti-Zionism is code for anti-Semitism. This is kind of a big deal because a lot of times people think that people hide behind the cloak of saying they're anti-Zionist and they mean Israel, but actually it's a veiled way of saying they're anti-Semitic.
Right.
Now a German judge, based on a ruling about there was some demonstrations over the summer, I think it was in a German city, and apparently the racial incitement aspect of this that came out in trial was equated with the whole anti-Zionism being equated with anti-Semitism in terms of the racial incitement factor, which led to this ruling. And it can be quite interesting to see what becomes of this, because even though it's in Germany, a lot of times you have like the Iranian regime, which talks about being anti-Zionist.
Right,
so
it's
Germany,
definitely not a new sentiment at all. It's not a new argument that these two are one and the same, but this could potentially open the doors for a lot of lawsuits now.
Judicially, it's very interesting stuff. And the fact that it's happened in Germany is actually also, I think, quite a positive sign, if I may say so. Interesting story in the Daily Star Beirut. Talks about these so-called honey trap hackers, which have stolen the plans from Syrian rebels to help prop up Bashar al-Assad's regime. So it's actually reported also in the New York Times. Basically, it's been confirmed that in late 2013 and 2014, hackers were targeting Syrian opposition members with sort of online honey traps. They were basically posing as very good-looking female supporters to steal battle plans and the identity of defectors. And so it's not clear if the information gleaned actually did help Assad directly, but there's evidence that actually there was some information that did help the regime deter some of the rebels' action plans.
So this is all kind of like an online correspondence.
Yeah, kind of like using pretty women as a lure to basically get information from different rebel groups.
Like Matahari.
Yeah, and apparently it's something that kind of is ongoing. So it's something that starts in a chat room and ends up with actual, in a way, supporting the Assad, whose resources apparently are going into this online effort. So pretty sneaky.
Yeah, really sneaky. Yeah. But working apparently.
At least to some extent. Still in the region, Bashar al-Assad reports that the Iraqi Prime Minister Abadi has declared and ordered an arms-free zone in a central part of Baghdad. He's basically come out and said that there's a big swath of Baghdad where he is ordering the Baghdad operations to command to make sure that this area called Karada is completely emptied of all weapons. Kind of a big deal, seeing as how Baghdad has been the site of almost unmeasurable violence.
Sectarian violence. And it's been record numbers of deaths.
It's almost like the definitive place for sectarian violence.
Right.
This comes on the heels of reports of clashes amongst different sectarian groups over the weekend. So let's see if he can actually get this enforced.
Yeah, I wonder how you would actually enforce that.
Yeah, he actually
wouldn't it become more of a target then for insurgents and people who want to cause harm?
I guess the idea is for everyone. If all the groups give up the weapons, then the idea in theory is that no, it will be safer. And he does hail from this district, so I think he has like a personal interest in making sure that it is relatively violence-free.
Well, let's hope that works out and spreads further across the city. That city needs some calm.
It does need some calm. Yes. And things are also looking lively in Europe. If we have time for Wall Street Journal, talks about how Germany is standing to be the big winner of the much-opposed European Central Bank stimulus package, basically, which is, they're saying it's kind of ironic because this was meant to kind of jumpstart the quantitative easing aspect technique to pump up the Eurozone, which it will, but Germany stands to profit the most from it, and it's already doing the best out of any of the other European zone countries.
Right.
So it's kind of like Germany is still going to come out smelling like a bed of roses. How is it going to trickle down to the other countries? So this article is saying really interesting to see because the big discussion now is about Greece and how much they are going to survive or thrive in the Eurozone. They have a new government now. The Wall Street Journal also reports that France is supporting Greece in its European Union debt battle, and of course the main opposition to bailing out Greece again, if need be, is Germany. So a lot of stuff going on this week in Brussels in terms of what's going to happen.
Yes, and also Spain. We're seeing a rise of the anti-austerity movement there as well. So perhaps a
austerity seems to be going out the window.
Yeah.
So, and speaking of Italy, Greece, mentioned Italy too. Michelangelo back in the news. Apparently,
after all these years.
After all these years,
he's back.
Not just the Sistine Chapel anymore, because he actually had basically two very interesting sculptures which have been confirmed to have been bronzes by him, and they look like that.
Wow,
they're
those
like
are
two naked guys riding panthers.
Yeah.
And not sure why they're riding the panther.
Yeah.
But they're beautiful, and
they are beautiful. How big are they? I don't know. Are those to scale?
I don't know. I think they're a little bit bigger than they seem, and I don't think. But I mean, they're not huge, but they're not tiny either. I mean, they're more than statuettes.
How do you actually figure out that he had
sculpted those?
Yeah.
Well, a private collector had these, and there was a molecular research, a neutron scan in Switzerland. Art historians were comparing it to other similar Michelangelo works, and basically, it's going to be unveiled officially today, I think, at the Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge in the UK. So it's going to be a big tourist draw too, because it's very rare that you see bronze sculptures by Michelangelo.
Very cool.
Very cool stuff.
Okay, well, Tony, thank you very much for this press review.
Thank you.
And moving on now, the world has become accustomed to bad news coming out of Egypt, usually involving bombings, clashes, and political revolt and executions. But earlier this week, the Egyptian government reported positive developments on its dwindling tourism industry. Tourism is the main source of foreign currency and a vital income for the Arab world's most populous nation. And although recent years have seen the industry fail amid prolonged security concerns, last year saw a 27% rise in tourism income. We're joined in studio by author and journalist who wrote an Egyptian guidebook, Surshizaf. Thank you very much for being here.
Good morning.
And also joining us from Cairo is I-24 News contributor Jacob Wertschafter. Hi, Jake. Thanks for being with us.
Good.
But before we launch into this conversation, let's hear what the Egyptian Minister of Tourism, Hisham Zazu, had to say about the latest figures.
Tourism during the past few years, as you know, is compared to 2010, the peak year that we use to measure progress. Then we had 14.7 million tourists. This dropped in 2011 to 9.8 million, then increased once again to 12 million, then went down again to 9.5 million. In 2014, this somewhat improved by around 4%, or a little less. But the number of tourists don't matter. What matters is our income from the tourism movement. Here we can see a clear progress in the outcome that came from tourism in 2014 compared to the year 2013. And that's because the average spending has increased. The number of nights tourists stay for has also increased after a decline in 2013. All this has led to the final tourism outcome increasing in 2014 from just below $6 billion US to 7.5 billion, which is more than 20% increase in our annual tourism income throughout 2014.
So Jake, we'll begin with you. What's your reaction to this new figure? Okay.
Hello? I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
Oh, no, that's all right. We thought we lost you there for a moment. Just what's your reaction to this new figure that tourism has risen 27% in the last year?
Look, I mean, tourism was hammered by the turbulence of the last 4 years. And it's one reason that most Egyptians support the Sisi crackdown on the Brotherhood. They don't want to see this industry endangered again. Look, the Egyptian officials have worked hard on it, and it's not a surprise that they touted these figures yesterday. They worked hard in Europe, where nearly 75% of their visitors come from, and they've been promoting direct flights to sun destinations on the Red Sea, like Hurghada and Sharm el-Sheikh, as well as direct flights to the pharaonic treasures at Luxor. So by cultivating the large tour operators in the UK and Germany and lobbying hard to get those travel advisories from the EU toned down or dropped, Egypt has something to celebrate.
Mm-hmm. And so what are tourists mainly afraid of when it comes to traveling to Egypt, especially now?
Well, when you're speaking about the news coming out of Egypt, basically these are the jihadist works in northern Sinai, which the Egyptians have secluded from the rest of the country because it's beyond the Suez Canal, and it's actually the area that most of the tourists were not going anyway. So I think that this is one of the reasons, and the second one is the unrest that happened in Cairo, especially around Tahrir, and the violent struggle between governments, various governments, demonstrators, terrorists and others. And therefore, as you heard from Egypt, the Egyptians formed what we call direct flights to places which avoid actually Cairo, which is a miss because Cairo is wonderful, going straight to the areas of Luxor and Aswan, and of course to the other parts of Sinai, like Sharm el-Sheikh, which are beautiful, wonderful, and
which
you can spend time.
Israelis love to actually go
exactly.
there.
But Israelis avoid Sinai for the last 2 or 3 years because they're afraid of terrorism, which is of course very much wrong, because there is a distinction between North Sinai and South Sinai, and there is a line that crosses mostly between Eilat and Suez. To the north of it is a bad country. To the south of it, it's a place where there's no problem, so you can go there.
And Jake, you mentioned that the government has been undertaking efforts to ensure more growth. So besides direct flights, what else have they been trying to do, and what countries are they really aiming at here? Where do they want tourists from?
Look, I need to mention that Egypt is still very much a value destination. You know, the central bank here has been fairly aggressive in letting the pound slip against big currencies. And this is a cheap place to eat and to sleep and to travel. That said, the days of staying at five-star hotels like the Cairo Marriott or the Sofitel in Zamalek for less than $100 a night are over. And of course, that in itself may be as much of a sign of the rebound here as the official figures that you guys reported. They're working on some big new infrastructure and tourism development projects that are going to be unveiled at the economic conference that's in Sharm el-Sheikh in just a couple of weeks. And, you know, the other thing I should say about tourism and the Egyptian economy is, yes, it's 10% of the GDP. But like everywhere else in the world, the biggest economic story today is cheaper oil. And cheaper oil is a mixed bag for Egypt. Lower gas prices are a check against inflation. They'll probably make poverty less dire here for the most of the indigent population. But the downside is that potentially fewer tourists come from the Gulf, and that's the other place that tourism comes from here is Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates and Qatar and Kuwait. And if those countries see a decrease in their spending power, Egypt may see a hit in terms of inter-Arab tourism.
I see, and that's another thing I want to touch on later. But so we understand you brought some pictures for us today from your travels in Egypt. And when was the last time you were there?
Well, I was there about a year ago. It's a good place. I think it's one of the most interesting places you can find on earth. And therefore, not going to Egypt is missing one of the most interesting and beautiful places. And the people are nice. I mean, it's nice to travel on the road. And I think that more than, if my colleague spoke about the luxury hotels, you don't have to take luxury hotels in Egypt. And you can go on the street and it's quite safe, and it's so much wonderful. I mean, to go into Cairo, into old Cairo, and with a lot of safety. I wouldn't go as a lone woman, maybe.
That's what I wanted to mention, because it's a big thing. It's very well known, the level of sexual harassment for women in Egypt and Cairo in particular. So what kind of
Well, first of all, don't go along into narrow streets. I mean, even in the center, it's much better to go in couples and maybe in small groups of people. But this is something that is rather new. It was not like that before the revolution in Egypt, and the revolution sort of like let out all sorts of devils.
Frustrations and pent-up tension,
No, but one of the good things about tourism coming back is that tourism trickles down to the street, meaning to say that a lot of the lower class people are having more money out of tourists and tourism, and therefore they will look after the tourists and they will control the violence.
Well, let's hope for a further rise in tourism. So thank you very much, Jake. Thank you for joining us from Cairo. And coming up next, 5 years after Haiti's devastating earthquake, photojournalist Alex Liebach joins us with photos. Welcome back to the morning edition. It was January 12, 2010, just before 5 p.m. when the world came crashing down for millions of Haitians. Bodies lined the streets and entire communities were reduced to piles of rubble. Last month, the world marked 5 years since a catastrophic magnitude 7 earthquake hit Haiti, claiming at least 230,000 lives. Life in the country continues to be difficult. Haiti's parliament was recently dissolved after the failure to elect new members, leaving President Michel Martelly running the country by decree and triggering daily street protests. Haiti has a long history of coups, uprisings, and dictatorships, and the dissolution of parliament raised fears that it was again on a slippery slope towards violent unrest. And just yesterday, violent demonstrations over oil prices resulted in at least 3 dead. With us in studio is photojournalist Alex Leibach, who was there after the disaster and recently returned. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
And also joining us is our media correspondent, Tony Grant. Tony, thanks for being here again. But before we delve into the story, let's take a look at the following report that tells the story of the catastrophic earthquake.
The children coming out of school here in Canaan, 15 kilometers outside Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince, aren't sure what to make of a TV camera. Some of them are terrified, while the braver ones are really quite excited. But despite the smiles, growing up here is tough. 5 years ago, when the earthquake leveled much of Port-au-Prince, the government and NGOs made land available nearby. As official housing in Camp Karai filled up, squatters started living on its outskirts, and 5 years on, many of them are still here. Juvens Noel is one of those still living under canvas. Like other residents here, he says life is made difficult by a lack of fresh water, electricity and jobs.
Compared to Port-au-Prince, where you can easily sell anything you want to sell, here there are no jobs, there's nothing, so people can't really buy things.
When it comes to housing, a lot of progress has been made. This development, opened in 2013, is held up as an example by the government. While these homes aren't representative for Haiti, the overall statistics are encouraging.
5 years on, for us, reconstruction is above all about those people who are living in tents. Straight after the earthquake, there were 1.5 million of them. Now we have a little under 70,000.
Despite the efforts made over the past 5 years, in many respects, the city is yet to get back to where it was the day before the quake struck. The site of the former presidential palace is still empty, although a number of government buildings and infrastructure projects are being built. Former Haiti correspondent Jonathan Katz says there are a number of reasons that billions of dollars in aid haven't remade the city.
Some of that money was pledged and not delivered, so it never really existed. A lot of the money was spent on Band-Aid solutions that were expended very quickly at the beginning and weren't ever intended to have a long shelf life. And insofar as any of that was ever intended to create long-term durable infrastructure or things like that, that kind of long-term durable infrastructure hasn't been created.
Meanwhile, back in Canaan camp, what were temporary bolt holes have become near-permanent homes. People here are still building, even if they don't know how sure their foundations will be in the long term.
And Alex, we understand that you spent much of the month of the past November in Haiti. Now, what was it like there now compared to what it was after the disaster?
There's a big difference, actually. If you go there for the first time, it looks like any other third world, the worst kind of third world country. But because I've been there before, there is improvement. First of all, you don't see any more ruins, demolished houses in the capital, at least. Almost nothing. They cleared everything. They're building roads. They're building. They just built a huge shopping center, but typical to Haiti. Unfortunately, a few days after it was opened in Port-au-Prince, people stoned the place, broke windows because of political conflicts. There was a political demonstration against the president, and the first thing they go to is smashing the windows of this new, huge, really amazing shopping center. But you have to understand that the majority of people can't even think about going and buying at a shopping center because the income is so low.
Right.
That for them it's like just a dream, you know. It's people won't go into a shopping center. You see people selling. The streets are full of things. You buy everything you need. You buy on the street, you know. You can see people selling shirts, radios, mirrors, everything, carrying it on their heads or on their back or in the hand. Mostly you see people carrying coal, you know, actually for cooking. And this is one of the reasons why only 1% of the original forest in Haiti, which is a Caribbean island, exists now, you know, which is such a shame, really. But there are many other reasons.
It's a strange image to have such a naturally green area, not so
you
green.
know, you fly over Haiti and you say, wow, this is a Caribbean island. It doesn't look like it at all, you know, it's like desert.
And we're looking at your work now. These are the images that you have taken throughout your travels there. Now, after the earthquake, what was it that really drew you to Haiti? What did you want to capture?
No, after the earthquake, you want to capture the disaster or whatever. I wasn't there right after the earthquake. I came a year later, as a matter of fact. But it was really everything was. There were huge refugee or shelter camps, you know, and the Port-au-Prince was practically demolished, you know, many parts of it. This is what I'm saying now. It's a lot better, you know. When you go to a place after a disaster, you look for you want to make nice pictures of people suffering, which is a bit awkward, you know, to say the least. But that's your job, you know. So you try to find some beauty, I'm ashamed to say, in other people's disaster, you know. But this time, I came because I fell in love with the Haiti, you know,
really?
For some reason. I don't know, I liked it a lot.
Like Sean Penn.
I liked the energy of the people there, you know.
Yeah, like Sean Penn. I mean, we know this American actor has, for instance, many actors and public figures. But he's really been committed from the very beginning.
Sean Penn,
what has Sean Penn done, Tony?
Well, I know in 2010, right after the earthquake, he actually co-founded the Haitian Relief Organization, which actually, I believe, employs something like more than 300 local Haitians.
Right.
So he's very heavily engaged there.
And he was responsible for a huge shelter, you know, for a huge camp for refugees from the disaster.
Is this money that he donated himself?
Well, no, I don't know. I think he raised money.
He helped coordinate the relief effort, I think, to get that basically built. So that's a major
But what I think is most important that I could see now that I didn't see before, that there's awareness of education, you know, because the Haitians are very poor, but they know that if they educate their children, then there's a chance of going forward, you know.
But isn't there no free education in Haiti? Don't you have to pay for education?
Well, it depends, you know. You have to pay very little, but if you want a good school, then you have to pay a lot.
Right.
And this is a big problem, you know, because I have to admit, I was a guest at the house of the former tourist minister. Her name is Maurice Kedar Penet, and she and her husband, he's an Israeli guy, they built 5 schools from scratch right after the earthquake, and they give free education to 1,000 pupils, you know, which is amazing, from kindergarten age to the age of 18. And it's an amazing place. But this is like what people have to understand, and they know, they're becoming aware of it, that education is the only wealth they have, you know, potentially.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, so this was an Israeli was involved here, but Israel did a lot in the aid effort, and they're still doing a lot. What kind of things, what sort of impact has Israel had on Haiti?
Well, first of all, I have to admit it's one of the few places when you say you're Israeli, people really admire you.
Oh, yeah?
You know? Yeah, which was nice, you know, for a change. First of all, the Israeli army came and really helped a lot, you know, for evacuation and saving lives. Actually, they built a small hospital, a field hospital. But on top of it, there was another Israeli group called IsraAid, who did a lot there in education and also agriculture projects in a place called Leogane, which is the fourth biggest city in Haiti. They still have a project there, but what they wanted to do is really educate people to use computers, high tech, but also agriculture.
So having sort of lasting effects that people can have skills that they can continue with even
exactly.
after.
They left.
Hopefully will be no need for this aid organization
exactly.
anymore.
They left after they finished one project. They made some people responsible for the Haitian local people responsible for the project, and it works.
Yeah, so there is room for optimism, and the following report examines a glimpse of what could be with one company leading the way into high-tech manufacturing.
This is Haiti, but perhaps not as you know it. Here in the clean room of Surtab, in the capital Port-au-Prince, workers assembled some 20,000 Android tablets in 2014, and the company hopes to triple that this year. But despite this early success, Surtab faces a battle against perceptions that Haiti doesn't equal high-tech.
Until they get here and look at the installations, they don't even believe that we're really doing this in Haiti. We even had workers that would go home and say that's what they're doing, and people not believing, we're not making this. So they had to bring a tablet home saying, okay, yeah, I made this. And still someone would ask, can you disassemble and reassemble it right now?
Another challenge faced by many here cropped up during an interview. Frequent power cuts make life difficult across Haiti. But within a few minutes, the backup generator kicks in and production resumes. The tablets themselves come in different varieties. The cheapest Wi-Fi only model offers full internet access at a low price, while the top of the range compares favorably with cutting-edge devices. So, could Surtab herald a new manufacturing-based business model for Haiti? Former State Department analyst Robert Maguire says there have long been hopes to turn the country into a so-called Taiwan of the Caribbean.
I'm not sure that an economy based upon just people sitting in a factory all of the time is a real way to develop a country, absent other elements of the economy. It can be a part of the solution, but too often I think it's seen as the solution.
There's also a question over salaries. Not all workers are happy with performance-based pay, which has a low base rate.
Compared between when the production line is going and when it's not, that's two different things. Surtab pays a salary that's very low, seriously low. But they offer an opportunity that we can make the most of.
Surtab says it's proud of the fact that it always pays at least 1.5 times the minimum wage. While manufacturing jobs may not be a cure-all for the country's economy, there is a certain pride that comes from seeing each tablet bearing the stamp made in Haiti.
And actually, another question for you. Did you see, when you were in Haiti, evidence of cooperation between American, aside from Sean Penn, but the American government relief efforts and Israeli?
Well, the American government had been, and still is very, very involved with Haiti, But this is such a huge subject that I don't want to touch it, for good and for worse, for better and for worse. But yes, there's a lot of American involvement. Israelis, that Israel don't have an ambassador. The Israeli ambassador, he's in the Dominican Republic, which is a neighbor
nearby,
of
same.
But like I said, there's one lady who lives there for 25 years, and she's the daughter of Abi Natan, and she fell in love with an Haitian, and she lived there. She has a huge gallery. But other than that, I didn't find any Israelis at all, and I don't think there's any impact. But people have a good memory of what, after the disaster, they really, but every time I said I'm Israel, they say, wow, yeah, great.
That's so interesting, yeah, because you say that it's maybe Israelis try to hide the fact that they're Israeli abroad normally. But before we finish, I do want to touch on the funding. Obviously, there's a lot of global aid effort funneling into Haiti, but where has the money gone? Because we're seeing that it's so poor, and what you're describing, you said it's just some of the worst third world conditions you can imagine. So what exactly is happening?
Well, apparently it's unbelievable, because 11 milliard, how do you say it in English? Billions of dollars were donated to, donated to Haiti, but only actually 1% of it got to the Haitian people. Which is only 1%. This is not my. People really researched it, because
so where is the rest of the money going?
A lot of it went to the organizations who donated the money from self-maintenance, which is unbelievable. But President Clinton tried to do something about it. But I don't know how successful he is.
Yes. Well, Alex, thank you very much for being here and telling us about your experiences. Tony, thank you for being here. We'll stay tuned for more from you. Coming up next, is Spain going down the same route as Greece? Stay tuned for more of the headlines. Welcome back to the Morning Edition. We are joined now by the Economy Magazine host, Benjamin Chang Alvarez. Benjamin, good morning.
Good morning to you.
So what's happening in the economy world?
The economy world.
Daunting.
Well, we just saw Syriza rise to the top in Greece, and they basically gave a lot of other parties around Europe a lot of hope that anti-austerity might have some possibility there.
Right.
Anyways, we have a report on it, I believe.
Okay, let's take a look.
With the anti-austerity Syriza party taking last week's snap elections in Greece, European leftists are feeling a jump in confidence. In Madrid, tens of thousands of people took to the streets over the weekend in support of Spain's Podemos party, which has taken up the anti-austerity mantle. The march was joined by like-minded party reps from Portugal, Belgium, Greece, and France.
Today we have the dream of a better country, but we haven't filled this square to keep dreaming. We are here to make our dream come true in 2015. Dreams have to be pushed, and this year we are going to fight to make the political change arise.
Spain is on the tail end of a 7-year economic decline. Consumer spending is up slightly. The third quarter of last year saw 0.6% growth, low but the highest since 2007. And the number of unemployed dropped by 250,000 people last year, according to the Spanish Labor Ministry. Despite these gains, nearly 1 in 4 Spaniards is out of work, one of the highest rates in the industrialized world, according to an AFP report. This means the Podemos party's platform is gaining strength. Just 1 year old, it already took 5 seats in the European Parliament last May, and opinion polls have them on top in Spanish elections coming this year.
We must join Greece and the rest of Southern Europe, those who are fighting the Troika and Merkel, because capitalism is over and we can't go on like this.
Still, throughout Europe, some suggest that within the current economic system, leftist parties from Spain to Greece will have to temper themselves as they gain power.
The interesting thing in this, I think, impacts Podemos as well. The more Syriza compromises with the creditors, the more it loses the more radical left. But the more it is likely maybe to win the space left by the social democracy.
Indeed, questions abound as to how Podemos and others will move forward, as only in recent months, anti-austerity parties are starting to make major political gains in Europe.
So we're seeing a lot of similarities here in Spain and in Greece.
It appears that way at first sight, but there's actually a lot of differences between Spain and Greece. For one, Greece had a humongous amount of debt, and they kept on taking more and more money. That's one side of the coin. Okay, Spain, on the other hand, essentially, Madrid never took on the kind of bailout that Greece took on. Spain mainly took on money for the banks, the banking system, which by the end of 2013, they were out of it. They were out of the whole bailout program, and they've been progressively doing better, which does not help Podemos, because when we look at Spain, yes, people are still dealing with a lot of unemployment there. Right. Okay, it's a very sore issue, right? We have about 25% unemployment still, and certainly about 1 in 4 young people are unemployed. However, when you look at the growth numbers, the growth figures, you look at the macroeconomics of the country, it's been doing a lot better, and austerity, as much as everybody hates it, has helped. So Podemos is fighting an uphill battle to some extent because, on the one hand, They're promising things that would be very, very interesting for the masses, certainly the ones that have been suffering under austerity for the past couple of years. But, if you look at it from an economic perspective also, are these promises real? Mm-hmm. They want to basically lower the retirement age to 60, from 65 to 60, and essentially increase the burden on the government to pay more retirement money. On the other hand, also, they have a variety of other programs going on to try to make life easier for the people. But where's the money going to come from? Right. That's the end. The bottom line. Mm-hmm. Where is the money going to come from? If you put in all of these, so to speak, populist practices and policies, you're going to definitely scare away investors. So it's kind of it's a catch-22 situation.
How does the country solve that massive unemployment rate?
Listen, from an economic perspective, again, you basically got to take in more investor money. You got to invest heavily into the economy, create infrastructure projects, whatever. Put the money where it can actually create jobs.
Right.
You don't create jobs from nothing.
Open more Zaras.
Open more Zaras. I am actually all for that, Tony.
Interesting idea.
That's a fantastic idea. I think you should move on over to Spain and pitch that.
From a political perspective, though, Podemos also is in a very different seat here than Syriza was. Syriza, when they basically won the majority in the elections, they got an extra 50 bonus seats. That doesn't exist in Spain. In the political system in Spain, that doesn't happen. Podemos basically has 30%. Currently, according to the surveys, they're just a little bit ahead of the socialists, and they're a lot ahead of the conservatives. But under any kind of situation, based on how it is now, what it looks like now, they would have to establish a coalition, and would necessarily not be able to push for the reforms that they're really, promising right now.
Mm-hmm. So, what's so attractive about this Podemos group? Is it just giving people hope that it will change? Is it's having that kind of Syriza effect on the public?
It has a Syriza effect, but it doesn't have the Syriza potency, so to speak, if you want. They're slightly impotent because when you look down the line, they're not going to be able to actually promise to offer all the things that they're promising right now. Similarly, frankly, Syriza may not be able either. We're hearing from the Northern European countries, hey, we've been paying with our tax money to get you out of the debt that you dug yourself into. Mm-hmm. And obviously the Greek people are not to blame for it, but the Greek government is, and the Greek people put the Greek government there, presumably. So
Okay, well, Benjamin, thank you very much for this segment, and moving from economy to the web.
Yes,
the viral spiral that is the web.
Everything on the,
Tony Grant back with us for a third time. Third time's a charm.
Well, speaking of back with us, the Super Bowl didn't really leave us. People are still talking about all the spectacular finish, the sharks, Katy Perry looking like a bag of Cheetos. The dress.
She did look like a bag of Cheetos.
You just wanted to dip into her.
Cheeto.
Yeah,
flying firework with a Cheeto exterior. But
even spicier.
But going back to the meat of the matter, Tom Brady.
Yeah.
His moment, pre-Katy Perry and after. And, of course, his wife, the lovely Gisele Bündchen, always mispronounce her name, was the first to pucker up because she is so proud, and rightfully so, of his big win. It's almost like a Hollywood moment, just such a spectacular kind of athletic accomplishment. Mm-hmm. And they are very much a power couple.
Oh, yeah.
So people are kind of talking about that still, and, of course, the halftime show.
Yeah, and I love it. I'm going to take this to a fashion perspective here. I really like just kind of her jeans and then, flannel button-up look, just kind of not going down that celebrity supermodel route, just being a mom, being a wife, supporting her husband at his sporting event.
Yeah.
Giselle, kudos to her.
Yeah,
for letting him have his moment.
Absolutely. The time will come when she will do her red carpet stuff again.
That's right.
But that's not now.
Okay.
Now, they are an amazing couple. Now, if you think to a different couple that was not so amazing, remember Paul McCartney when he was with Heather Mills?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll get to Paul McCartney in a second, but Heather Mills has her own reality show these days, and it's called The Jump. She had a little accident, though. This is a British show. It sort of involves skiing, and she broke her prosthetic ski jump limb actually just hours before she was supposed to use it on one of the slopes there. So it's going to be repaired.
Wait.
Yeah, trying to process all.
Ski jumping or like skiing? What are we? What
jumping.
Exactly?
Wow. On skis.
Oh
yeah.
my!
It's sort of like it's sort of like.
Yeah, I mean, she's an aggressive individual and really a trooper, to say no. But it's amazing how she kind of has jump-started her career with this reality show, so to speak. No pun intended. Okay. But keeping it interesting.
Yeah.
And the British are always surprising us. Queen Elizabeth has surprised us. She has said she will take on no more corgis in her.
What?
Yes. The Queen, who is famous for her collection of, her little zoo of Royal Pembroke Welsh corgis.
She always has them kind of scurrying around.
She always, and she's not going to get rid of the ones that she has, but she's announced at the age of 88 she will not be acquiring new corgis because she is afraid she might trip over them.
Okay.
Now, you would not want a queen tripping over those puppies because that would not, her hat would fall off. And she's basically publicly said she doesn't want to trip.
Okay,
yeah.
I get it.
You got to get it because they run around. They're like low dogs.
I have 2 small dogs. Trip on them all the time.
Yeah,
so,
why
that could be scary.
It could be scary.
That could be. Okay, fine.
They don't need more dogs. They don't need more dogs in Buckingham Palace because they have Prince Andrew.
What has he done?
Randy Andy. Well, apparently, Randy Andy's pal may have secretly filmed him with underage sex slave. So
Stop it.
I'm not. Well, I am, but he apparently hasn't. So whether or not this tape actually exists, and whether or not it will come out in evidence, because there is a trial afoot somewhere, I think in Florida. The book has not been finished on the alleged goings-on of Prince Andrew with this alleged sex slave.
Well, these royals,
they just,
scandalous.
They have great
British
causes,
media.
Charitable causes, but they also maybe have a little bit of imagery working to work on. Speaking of royalty, Paul McCartney. Yes, with Kanye West and Rihanna together for 5 seconds. It's their new song collaboration. I think we have a little visual there. Have you seen Rihanna's new look?
No.
Denim. Some vintage Sean John, yeah. This is kind of a new thing for her to put on clothes.
Yeah, you're right.
I was just going to say she's wearing clothes. Really?
And really majorly
she's
covered
really
up there.
Covered.
Yeah,
for her that's covered. So,
wow.
It's really interesting seeing that Paul McCartney's really embracing kind of this generation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And doing a song with Kanye. And did you hear how young kids? I don't know if you can necessarily blame them. They said, "Oh, well, Kanye West made this old guy famous. They don't know who Paul McCartney is." Yeah,
that's a little bit frightening.
Yeah,
it's like, come on, kids, go to Wikipedia or just Beatles.
Do you know where the Beatles are?
Yeah.
You know you're getting old when, but
exactly.
I guess they haven't made it to Glee yet, so they don't know about.
Exactly.
But
so next Glee.
She's also, I have to say, Rihanna's teased snippets of this new song on Instagram, so it's a lot of buzz starting about that.
Very cool.
And James Franco was moved away from the interview. And all that, he will be actually directing an adaptation of John Steinbeck's Indubious Battle, which is kind of an interesting choice. He'll be starring in it, but he's gotten together a collection of famous faces that are going to be in it, including Danny McBride, Ed Harris, Selena Gomez. It's going to be interesting stuff.
Interesting. You got to give it to him. He's really, taking on different challenging projects lately.
Yeah, a real chameleon, and he's he manages to find time when he's not Instagramming himself in his underwear, which is also nice.
Yeah, well, let's just
let's hope that
let's just ignore that behavior and keep focusing on his work. But he's moving on up.
He's moving on up.
Getting a lot of experience.
Yeah. Fun guy to watch. Do I have time for a strange item in New York Magazine?
Please.
Talking about the semi-official French guide to how to spot a jihadist.
Okay.
Yes. The French government has come out with this handy chart which identifies signs of how to spot a potential jihadist in your midst. This is not making this up. Apparently,
is this a joke?
If you stop eating baguettes suddenly, that could be a sign. They should, change in dietary habits, avoiding mixed gender sports all of a sudden, withdrawing from your family. I mean, obviously we know where this is coming from, last month's horrendous attacks.
Right.
But again, I don't think you would see this kind of thing coming out of, say, the White House or the United States.
No,
interesting.
This is not very PC.
No, not at all. No. But they're trying to be, and it's controversial. Interesting to see it. Justin Bieber's Calvin Klein ad.
Oh, this again?
Yeah.
Aren't we done with
Someone
this?
spoofed it with cats.
Oh. I'm dying to see this.
Yeah, I think they did a better job with the cats, but I don't know if we can take a look.
Or if not, we can just
No,
imagine.
we can take a look. Oh. No, it's coming up.
My cat Yeah, it's kitty porn. I'm sorry.
No,
Soft
really,
kitty porn.
I don't actually. Besides it being in black and white and the cat wearing like white underwear, I really don't understand how that has any connection to
You're
Justin
not a
Bieber.
cat person.
I'm not a cat person.
Neither am I.
I'm open-minded.
You're open-minded. Okay.
I like cats.
You like cats?
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
I don't know. I don't really like Justin Bieber, so hey.
Right?
The main thing is that you don't have to watch Justin Bieber. You get to watch a cat. I mean, that to me, that's the upside.
Like, try to take it to a level where we understand where you're going. I mean, get a sexy female cat behind him and pose like he was posing with. Who was he posing with? Cara Delevingne?
In the I don't know, it was mostly in this one. It was mostly the Photoshop bicep, or the allegedly. He really looked like the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
So there was some question as to whether or not those were actually his actual biceps. So I don't know. Maybe the cat thing didn't quite.
That didn't really connect. But funny effort. I mean, I gotta give it to whoever.
Yeah, I mean, before the Super Bowls,
like
everyone was talking about the Justin Bieber in the Calvin Klein / diaper. Depending on your interpretation of that fashion statement.
Okay, well, Justin Bieber cat, Super Bowl, I think we covered it all.
Pretty much,
Grant,
there you
thank
go.
you very much for being here. Benjamin, thank you again for your insight. And that wraps up today's show. Join us again tomorrow at the same time to start your morning off right.